Welcome to Business Notes, the show where entrepreneurs tell their stories of struggles, strategies, and successes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino. I'm excited to have Dave Haskins as my guest today. Dave is a learning and development professional by trade and proud owner of a coaching business, Universal Signals. Universal Signals is a practice that uses astrology to empower others to be the best version of themselves. Dave started learning astrology over 10 years ago and opened his business during the pandemic as he saw a distinct need for people to understand themselves and make sense of their world through the art and science of astrology. Dave lives in Metro Atlanta, speaks German and Spanish fluently, and loves connecting with people from all over the world. Now, here's Dave to tell us what might be in our stars. Dave, thank you for being on the show today. I'm so happy to be interviewing you.
Diane, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to be able to be part of your show. Thank you for having me and, setting this up. It's always a pleasure to see you and great to be part of this.
Yeah, we go back a long way, so we won't talk about that, but we'll get arrested. No, I'm kidding. So Dave, what misconceptions do people typically have about astrology?
I think people have had maybe very limited knowledge to astrology. And I say it can be very much, people might know they're an Aquarius, they're a Scorpio, they're a Leo, what have you, and they've read about it in maybe the paper or, online somewhere, right? And so it's very superficial and usually a bit of doom and gloom, and you have to be guarded and you have to watch out for this. And so it's one of those things where, unfortunately, and this science, art and science goes back thousands of years, but it's really been maybe watered down or misunderstood. And so I think one of the biggest things is people really don't have an appreciation for, much like the weather and the qualities of life and the archetypes that Jung and all the psychologists talk about. It's all kind of connected. And this is one of those, it's a very deep kind of understanding of life, but it's kind of been popularized in a way where people are like, what is this hocus pocus type of thing? And so there's been a lot of, misconceptions. I think that it's really this thing that it's not. And it's also, I think one big thing is that it's really this predetermined thing about you or what's going on in your life that you can't change. And that couldn't, I think, be further from the truth. As I tell people in my readings, my consultations, these are indicators, much like all of us are born with certain traits, qualities, genes, what have you. It doesn't mean that just because those are in place, you're going to be a star basketball player, or you're going to be doomed to never be able to sing or something like this. It's just, it could be, something around those potentials or likelihoods, but you always have free will. And I like to really clarify that's always part of the picture when we're talking about astrology.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. But what got you started on studying astrology? You've been studying it for 10 years.
Yeah, great question. So, I actually come from a very religious, traditionally religious background, which I always tell people, super great foundation for me from a spiritual perspective. And, every tradition has its imperfections, or as it's trying to understand and establish different things. And I think for me, it got me to a point in my development where I was able to understand that there is something beyond kind of the flesh and blood here in the physical, right? Which, it's the beauty of the physical and the non-physical spirit, if you will. And so that was a great foundation. But I really was, always curious, thinking there must be something else we're missing. And I felt in the pursuit of truth that in a lot of cases, not all, that some religions kind of put things in a box so much that it can, and not all, I don't want to classify or badmouth any religions, but can it inadvertently put a damper on people's understanding of themselves and at worst put people in a box and say you can only do so much, right? And so for me, I think I was really feeling the tension of there must be something else here that isn't so judgmental, dare I say, that allows people to explore themselves, honor themselves. And I was in one of those situations where I was like, I think there's something else here. Always a truth seeker, always curious, always trying to, a teacher at heart. You know, both of us, we come from a, you know, a love of teaching, right, Diane?
Right.
So it's understanding something so that I in turn can be of help to society, and in trying to understand a framework that allows for a little bit more wiggle room and a little less judgment, worst case persecution. And astrology really, and I tell people this is just one of many ways that you can understand yourself, the way the world works, the way people are, the way nature is. You work with, you know, within the career and business space around assessments, and there's many ways to slice and dice the onion, right? So the onion is complex. So um,
That's right.
so this really was something that resonated with me. Doesn't resonate with everyone necessarily, because there's many ways you can go about this, but resonated with me in such a way that I felt compelled to learn it. And then, being the teacher that I am, teacher spirit, wanted to whoever would be open to it or it would resonate with as well, connect with, so that I could help people to you know, leverage this art and science to help themselves and help others in their relationships.
Well, that's an interesting background and a great perspective that you bring. And that's something I didn't know about you. So I'm learning something here myself. So tell me, how do your clients benefit from what you do for them? And tell us a little bit about the services you provide.
You know, I do provide kind of some key services, one mainly being the birth chart. So whereas a lot of people at least know their zodiac sign, which is the sun sign, actually, it's where the sun was and what constellation when you were born. This gives you a full map of when you were born on that day in maybe August of whenever it was, you know, 69 or whatever year. The planets were in certain positions in the sky, and that this gives them, so we have the, you know, the sun, the moon, Mercury, all the planets of our solar system, some asteroids, and some other points. So you kind of get this map, this blueprint, and it's called your natal chart. So natal birth, when you were born, and this is kind of, you come in with these set points, so to speak. So this service is particularly, and I recommend this to anybody who's really new to astrology, but also just trying to start with getting to know yourself. And so what I'll do is walk people through a 1 hour reading of their birth chart. And then I do also offer some other readings that have become wildly popular as of late, especially around career, around also relationships. So a lot of new parents are saying, my child, I just had a baby a few months ago, and I want to know what I can do to support who they are. And I'm like, beautiful. Wouldn't
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of the new thing, which I'm just fantastic parents, a way to start off this whole journey with your child, because oftentimes what do parents do? Best of intentions, you know, this is what I learned, and I want to impart that to you without honoring the specifics or uniqueness of the child. So this gives them a tool to do that. So romantic relationship readings. I do what's called a composite reading, where you can see how you and your significant other come together as a team, as one brand, if you're kind of, you know, you're in it together. And then also what's called a synastry reading, which is kind of where you trigger each other for better or for worse, which, you know, that never happens, right? So yes, and so that's a really nice one. And then a big part of my readings is also kind of soul purpose, which is kind of a deep thing. When you say soul purpose, wow, that's pretty deep. But really getting to, because so many of us in life, as you know, Diane, we go down a path, and maybe we're told we need to be a lawyer, we need to be a doctor, we need to do this or that. But are we really honoring maybe what our soul came in with and said, you know, and maybe in the back of our minds, we know this, but there is a way in your astrology where you can look at what is your soul really wanting you to do this lifetime. So I tell people, we are eternal beings. We are coming in, we're going, we're here and there. And that's the beauty of this whole thing. And so for this act, when you come in, what is it about? Because you want to build on what you came in with. And so I practice a form of astrology called evolutionary astrology, which is really about empowerment. It's not about fear. It's not about judgment. It's not about this is set in stone, but it's about certain ways to look at indicators in your astrology and see where you can really, where it resonates, where you can build on that. And so those are kind of the services I provide. People can expect, at a minimum, if they start with their birth chart, to really get a solid understanding of who they are, so that at least you can honor you, and then you can go do those relationship things, which, let's be honest, oftentimes it's the other way around. It's like, I'm going to go find myself in the relationship. And how does that work out, right? Most of the time that becomes a real interesting dance of sorts, where you've got two people that don't quite have themselves figured out, and they're not, and this is socialized. So most of us are looking externally for, instead of looking within. And this is, just, we do it with everything because we've learned to. But astrology really, I tell people, it helps you, like many other great assessments out there, honor you first. Like, know your strengths, know the challenges you came in with, which we know challenges are growth opportunities, right?
Right.
And then know what kind of those things are that are emotionally supportive of you. What are your likes? What are your dislikes? And things of that nature. And the astrology shows amazingly kind of these key traits that are, very specific to you.
Yeah. Dave, I went to your website and I love that you have this spinner on your website where people can get or maybe a different time of reading or a free reading, but you also offer a free 15-minute consultation, which is great. But what is the best way for people to get in touch with you if they would like a reading?
Thanks, Diane. So I'm glad you enjoyed the spinner. That was a nice little ad that some of my marketing consultants said we could do. And I said, oh, sure, let's do it. So if you haven't gone to my website, or if you do go to my website, which is www.universal-signals.com, you will instantly see a spinning wheel that comes up, much like the Wheel of Fortune, and spin that wheel because you could get 20% off of a reading, and or another type of special reading that's on there at a discounted price, or potentially a free reading, I think, is on there. So that's the best way to go. Look at the website. I've got a lot of other information out there for those who are interested in knowing more about astrology, with some free tools. And then under my services page, you can see those different services that I just mentioned not too long ago, and you can see the pricing and things like that. And anybody listening to this show, if you listening to this show, I'd love to honor a 20% discount just for tuning in as a listener. And so just reach out and say that you were here and listening, and I'll be delighted to give you that experience at 20% off. Or feel free to book a 15-minute consultation where I just kind of give you a little bit of a rundown about what to expect.
That is awesome. Very good. Very good. And listen, I think your prices are reasonable to start with. So that's really a very nice gesture. I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you.
Right.
And yes, your blog, I'm glad that you brought that up, because you do have a lot of good information in the blogs that you write that I think helps people understand astrology much better. So they should read those as well.
Thank you.
And I want to get back to what you were talking about earlier about people feel like people like me that do assessments and people like you that do astrology try to put you in a box, but you and I know that would be impossible, even if we wanted to, which we don't, because you express so well how we do try to empower people to use what they have to build a better life and career. But if you could just briefly explain all the things that you look at when you have to go in to do a reading.
It's a great question. And this is kind of digging into the astrology a little bit more. But when I would go through, so if you'd go out and sign up for a birth chart reading or what's called a natal chart reading, I will walk, as I tell all my clients in the reading, I'll walk you through. So I'll put up this beautiful birth chart, which at first it's like, whoa, there's a lot of information because it's this wheel, it's got your time of birth, which is really an important thing. The time of birth gives you even more specifics, the place of birth, where you were born. And you'll see this wheel with all these lines, and they're very specific to you, and colors. And then these symbols that are for all the different planets, and they show where they show up in the different signs. And what I do is I kind of do a tour of the solar system, of the planets and some of the asteroids, and where they fall. And piece by piece, I will give you qualities of your life. So for example, if you have a sun in Aquarius, you're very much here to be different. You're very much here to be a humanitarian. You're very much here to stand out and hold a place as an advocate for others who are an individuality, just as a pure example for the sun. But a lot of people don't know that the moon sign, I encourage everyone who's listening in, if you don't know what your moon sign is, if you know your sun sign, fantastic, most people do, but the moon sign is your emotions and what emotionally feeds you. And so, for example, I have my moon sign in Sagittarius, which is very much about explore, understand other cultures, have a sense of optimism. And so I'll go into how that feeds my spirit, and emotionally I need that. So, so I don't get cranky. And so I feel kind of emotionally supported. So we go through that. There's Mercury, which is about thinking, how you communicate. Venus is around, people usually think Venus is around love, which it is because it's tied to values, but what you value in yourself, what you value in others. So we go through a whole series of the planets. There's also in there your Jupiter sign, which is around the gifts you came in with. Jupiter is like strengths, in that if any of you have gone through like a strengths finder, it's where you can put, you should put some effort, because it's where you can get the most bang for your buck, in that these are kind of qualities. So it's really laying the landscape of kind of some innate qualities you come in with, potentials. Now it's up to you whether you do anything with this, or you just kind of, and sometimes intuitively they're really in touch with these qualities that they came in with. But most of us, it's hard. I mean, we usually kind of lose our way, best of intentions. We're listening to the outside voices in the peanut gallery. And right. And it's just, it gets, our own sense of self gets watered down. And so what this does is it really gets, it's almost like a homecoming, Diane, where you go back and people are like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is what, I knew maybe when I was 5 years old, or what I've known about myself. And it helps people to kind of excavate that beautiful ancient, temple that is you, and make sure that that's brought to the forefront. So, and even with challenges, there's a way in your astrology and your birth chart to see, maybe you had challenges communicating, but you can, this is your growth opportunity to really be someone who can master this area, even despite a growth opportunity. So, I mean, you can see so many different things in the chart. You can see relationships with parents, potentially. You can see where you have the best opportunity in life. And again, the soul purpose. That's one of my favorite things in the birth chart, which is around what's called the North and South Node. A lot of people don't know about this one with astrology. That really shows your intended trajectory in regards to your life in general. So a lot of good nuggets that we can dig. And then it's really about folks coming with questions. So I tell people, I'll go through your astrology, but if you feel, and some people will just listen, I record all my sessions so people can listen back via a Zoom call. For the most part, because a lot of my readings have been virtual because I do them with people all over the world. But it's really something that people can have and think about and revisit, and to really get to know themselves so they can navigate this world honoring those things they came in with. So
All right. I love the way you put the strengths being the biggest bang for your buck, because that is where people need to build for their career and their life. Absolutely.
for sure.
You mentioned, I think it's on your website, about how astrology can predict a career, or maybe help you get the best fit for a career. Could you talk a little bit about that, how that works?
There's a really cool part of the birth chart called the midheaven, which is a part of the chart that is, if you look at the birth chart, it's kind of organized where you have 12 houses for all of the 12 signs. And there's the 10th house, which is kind of the top of the chart. It's like midheaven, almost midlife, where you get to with your career, because we're establishing ourselves through life. But what are we reaching to? And this midheaven has a sign associated. It could be Leo, it could be Cancer, it could be Taurus. Depending on what sign is there on what's called the cusp or in that house, gives you the qualities, the qualities connected with that sign of maybe the field you'd go into. And there's a couple other things to pull out of that, but really it can help you to know what you're building towards. And so if, for example, you're a Taurus, you might be doing, Taurus is very connected with property, material resources, things like that. And maybe that you have a career in real estate or something where you're managing other people's resources, or Taurus is also very connected with money or banking. So this is just an example. So I would look at the client's chart, look at some angles and positions and planets, and basically, ask a few questions. But given what is in that midheaven or the 10th house, will give you an indication of what, it's not going to be super specific per se, but it'll get you in the general neighborhood of some things that might be suitable for you. Much like a lot of career assessments, they'll give you maybe, a list of different things that might be in your range there. But this is a really good one, because with the midheaven and with career, it's not necessarily something you're just born with, but it is something you'll grow into. And so this is, along with the sole purpose, it is really something I like to point out to folks, because it does give them a sense of, on the life stage, what are you intended to do? And what are those things you could look at doing if you haven't explored them, that really are in alignment with something that you can do that you have purpose around. And I think so many of us are looking for that, not only in a spiritual sense, but in a material sense, like in the world, I want to be successful. And so this is just yet another thing, along with other assessments. And, I actually love assessments. So I'll take my astrology and I'll take other assessments, and it all kind of connects together in an interesting way. But this is just another way you can look at things, the career aspect, and what you might not have considered before, and how to tackle that per se. So,
my next article on LinkedIn is going to be about self-assessment. You're taking it to a whole new level here. I love it. So, Dave, let's take a hypothetical situation, and let's say somebody's going for an interview on Thursday and they have a reading with you that day, and maybe the reading says it's not a good day for an interview. Do you tell them to cancel the interview? How does that work?
Cancel the interview ASAP. It's not a good day. No, I don't get into that business. Now it may be, I'll be very honest, that because what I do say with astrology is it's almost like, the Farmer's Almanac. If anybody knows of that or remembers that, and farmers would use that as a kind of a guide for planting or what's going on, right? Well, astrology really is connected so much with nature. Now, it's as any kind of weather forecast, is it perfect? No. As we know, it's a tool, and it can be helpful to kind of guide. But if a person had an interview on Thursday and I did a reading with them, and I might see, well, this is a really quiet time for you. This is a time per your astrology where you're really looking inward, and maybe you're not going to be as expressive. And I put that into context for them, and I put them into context of the larger thing that's going on with them. But I don't like to get specific in that, okay, you need to go here, turn this corner here, do this and this. I mean, that's for each of us to navigate, right? And if I'm taking credit for that, and I'm taking the power away from the individual, but I may guide them if I'm saying, well, here might be some challenges, because we've got the personal astrology for the person, but we also have the astrology that's going on just in general with everyone. So it may be that there could be, just in general with the astrology of the day, based on the planets, a little bit of aggressiveness or a little bit of, not so smooth conversations. So I probably would point out to them, be aware that these are the energies of the day. There might be a little bit extra. Like today, for example, we've got a new moon. It's in Cancer, which at its best can be homing and comforting. But because some aspects are in the sky, it's a little cranky today. We might have some crankiness. So if you're dealing with your boss or you're having an interview and this person just seemed extra cranky, it's part of the weather forecast. So I would, again, I'm all about empowerment. I would say, be aware of this. I don't want to just say, oh, it's going to be just unicorns and rainbows. You'll be great. But I want to be realistic, but I also am not about this is predetermined and all you have no say in what's going on. But I do want people to, much like if it was raining outside, we'd probably want to go outside with an umbrella or a rain jacket, given the weather. So really this can be a nice, not absolute, but predictor of the kind of energy weather that's out there from an astrological perspective that I really find cool as well. So astrology is not only a know yourself, know others tool, but it's really also, because it is based on when you're born, you kind of embody the weather of that day. And so much in that same way, I would help people to understand the season they're in, or the season all of us are in. And so, that can help a lot, as it's helped me to navigate, those different situations that come up. So in a nutshell, to answer your question, I would empower them to move forward with the interview, but I would point out anything positive or challenging that they might want to be aware of. So again, they don't take anything too personally, which I also like about astrology, and they can use whatever's going on to their benefit.
Right. So no crystal ball, but just helping them be better prepared.
That's exact. You nailed it. I tell people in my readings, I'm like, there's no crystal ball here. There's no witch hat or any of that going on. That's not this show. There's a lot of those other gigs going on out there, but that's not what I'm about. And so it's more, here's some indicators of what could be, but it's up to you to decide how you're going to navigate that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Dave, is there anything that you'd like to tell your audience, or anything I haven't asked you?
No, I would just encourage folks. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world right now, obviously, if you haven't noticed. And right.
If you've been under a rock, okay.
Yeah. I mean, let's just refresh the news every 2 seconds. And it's like, whoa, so, and I think for me, I really, took the opportunity with my practice to get out there 2 years ago when the pandemic had started. And I think I was especially encouraged to do this to help others, because as different things are changing or collapsing or, kind of around us, there's a lot of drama. It's a great time to go within and get connected with yourself. And a lot of us have done this and different forms or fashion or on certain legs of the journey. But what I love about what I do is it helps people to get centered. And astrology and many other tools help you get centered with yourself and get some perspective so that you are in a place of empowerment, and so that no matter what's going on in the world, you can do you. And because you're in a good place to do you, hopefully you'll take it to the next step where you can encourage others to do that as well. You can be like, hey, do you know your astrology? And that's sometimes how people get into the whole astrology thing, or other ways, right, where you can. And I think that's probably why you and I are birds of a feather, Diane. We really help. We're curious beings, and we also enjoy being able to help other people understand themselves and get empowered, and operate from a place of empowerment, and not a place of, well, this is just predetermined, so you just kind of got to go with what you've got. And so that's what's encouraging to me with my journey. And I would just encourage anyone who hasn't looked into this more. And I think in the last few years, and with the younger generation especially, people have gravitated kind of back to astrology as a way to connect in when things around us seem not so stable.
Yes.
So that's what I would encourage folks to do, is to take an opportunity, start with your birth chart if you haven't. And I'd be happy to connect with anyone out there who would like to have that experience and just get to know themselves so they can feel truly comfortable in their skin.
Yeah, great. I just thought of another question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
As we learn more about astrology, or and astronomy and the planets and all of that out there in other worlds, does that change astrology? Does astrology update itself as we learn more science?
It's really interesting that you asked that question. It's very relevant because, for years, astrology has been around for thousands of years, but we didn't know about Pluto. We didn't know about Neptune until, I think Neptune specifically was the late 1800s. And Pluto wasn't until the 20th century. So as these planets or new asteroids are discovered, it's kind of worked into the mix. It's like another layer of the onion. And so I love that question because it honors the complexity of things. So it's not just like there's these 5 things and that's all there is, and that's all you have to work with. It's a continual unpacking of different pieces, and much as our exploration of self is, with astrology, there's an ongoing evolution. And so I really like that question, and that it helps me to say and honor the fact that we never understand it all, and we never intended to. From a soul perspective, we're always growing, we're always learning, we're always building on what we know. And that's the beauty of it. And so there's, from the perspective of astrology, there's not a person up, as my brother likes to say, sitting on a cloud in a white suit or a white robe and with all the answers, and then just like, here you go, now please follow these, and you'll be done. And much in that same way, astrology has lent itself to grow and develop and incorporate any new planets that are discovered, or asteroids that build on what, kind of the traditional astrology from when this was first kind of conceived, so thousands of years ago.
Well, Dave, you have brought a new perspective, I'm sure, to many people out there. And I hope that people now take another look at astrology because of our discussion today, and certainly go visit your website and give you a call for a reading. And thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you doing this interview. Thank you.
I am honored that you asked me and gave me a stage here on your program to talk. And as always, it's always so fun to see you and connect with you. So it was kind of like a double win as far as that's concerned. So thanks, Diane. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dave. Talk soon.
Okay, take care.
Thank you for watching Business Notes. We've been speaking with Dave Haskins, learning and development professional by trade and owner of Universal Signals, a life coaching practice using astrology. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.